This episode of the podcast is brought to you by HRH Combat Arms. They can turn your vision into reality. They specialize in gunsmithing and Cerakoting. Your Cerakote specialist is Air Force veteran and retired police sergeant Paul Ware, aka the Sarge. He can Cerakote your firearms, auto parts, tools, even your sports equipment. And then your master gunsmith is Marine veteran Steve Miller. This veteran-owned business is located at 5025 Saunders Suite 103, Fort Worth, Texas 76119. You can call them at 682-304-0363, and you can find them online at www.hrhcombatarms.com. That's www.hrhcombatarms.com. All right, welcome back to Cops One Donut. I am your host, Eric Levine, and today I have a special guest with me, Mr. Kirk, correct?
Correct.
Kirk Weicht, or
Correct.
Wright?
White.
White.
Just like the color. Not spelled like that, but just like the color.
Okay, yeah, I knew it was spelled kind of funny. And today, let's see, it is December 30th,
Sounds
2021. Right. This is going to be the last podcast for this year. So in 2021, this is the 40th episode. I started kind of mid-year, about April, and I've kept going. It keeps growing and growing. So
good job.
Appreciate it. I had one of our mutual friends, Charles Clark, reach out, and he's like, "Hey, I got a guy. I think you should have him on the show. He's got a lot of good info, and you guys will have a good discussion."
Right.
You know, the typical stuff when people suggest guests to me. I'm always a little bit leery when people volunteer themselves to me. Like, I'll get these messages, "Hey, I'll be a good guest on your show." It's not that I'm totally opposed to that, but
I understand.
If you don't know the person and they're saying that, then, because this is my house, so I'm inviting people into my home.
Right.
But I trust Charles. Charles is going to be on the show eventually.
Really?
Yeah, we keep trying to work it out, but
that'll be an interesting conversation.
He's a busy guy, but you've got a lot of stuff going on, and I don't want to mention. I'll let you talk about it. I know you got the leo.org thing going on too. Was that correct? Was that you?
No.
That wasn't you?
No.
Okay.
I got a lot going on, but not leo.org.
Okay, I thought it was something like that. Charles had said something like...
So what you're referring to is myself and Charles and a few other members. We are starting a not-for-profit designed to help veterans, law enforcement, first responders, both active and retired, for PTS.
Oh.
So that may be what you're remembering.
That's probably what he was talking about.
Yeah. And
you know how it is through text.
Yes. And he is part of that group.
Okay.
So we're right in the formative stages of that. We've had a few meetings, had some meetings with the attorneys and the accountants about trying to move forward with it. But
okay.
That's probably what you're remembering.
Okay. That makes sense. All right. So, Kirk, first off, tell people about yourself. Where are you from? How did you get to the point you're at in your life right now?
Well, it's kind of a interesting story. I grew up in upstate New York, and
You're a Yankee.
Yeah, and so from the time I was about 15 years old, I started working in a veterinary hospital. Knew at a really, really early age that that's what I wanted to do, and grew up in the Niagara Falls area, and started working in a veterinary hospital at age 15. Fast forward about 49 years, virtually uninterrupted in the veterinary medicine field. I ended up going to A&M, graduating, going back to the clinic that I had been at since I was 19 years old, ultimately purchased that clinic, and recently retired this year after 49 years in a veterinary hospital.
You didn't want to round it to 50?
No. Well, yeah. And in fact, I'm still doing relief. Yeah. So, and that's been minimal. And I still get, calls from clients that I've had for years and years, and I can't go into the school or whatnot without people approaching me. So it's still in my blood.
Yeah,
for sure.
So I'm from Michigan, and there's a show from Michigan of a vet.
Right.
I can't think of the name.
Well, there's several of them. There's that Dr. Pole, and
it might be him.
Yeah,
the
older guy,
old dude. Yeah. And he's always just teasing his son who kind of does the vet stuff and doesn't. But my kids love that show.
Right.
But yeah, that's right in pretty near where I grew up. I can't remember the city he's out of, but yeah. So that gave me kind of an interest in the veterinary side of things. But you you probably handled in New York all sorts of animals.
Well, see, I left New York when I was 19 years old.
Oh, so you did all that here?
Yeah. So what happened was I just finished my freshman year of college. So this would have been 1976.
Okay.
And my dad called and said, hey, listen, Bell Helicopter is sending us to Tehran, Iran, but we're going to be in Texas for probably a year and a half. Just been accepted to be an RA. It was going to save us a ton of money. So I said, I'll tell you what, why don't I stay up in New York? I'll finish my sophomore year in college here, and then I'll come down to Texas. Well, the Shah was overthrown. The helicopter contract left, Bell Helicopter, but my dad ended up staying down here. So ultimately, I came down here at the end of my second year of college, got into A&M, finished my undergraduate degree at A&M in 1979, got into vet school in 79, graduated in 83. But since 1977, I had been working at an animal hospital here in Bedford, ultimately came back to that clinic after graduation, ultimately bought that practice, and then ultimately retired from that practice.
Okay. So the question that people are going to wonder, because most of the time, not every time, I try to get as many non-cops on here as I can lately, because I think I've done my fair share of the show so far with LE.
Right.
I've had one firefighter, I've had some prosecutors, defense attorneys, a mayor, working on getting a judge. So corrections officer. So I'm hitting all sides of, our first responders and stuff like that.
Right.
I even want to get some medical and some teachers, because I think that they're more on the front lines than most people give them credit for. And I want to get their side of the story. So I want to get a dispatcher. So I'm totally all up and down the CJ side of things, but it's very rare to get somebody on the other side of the house or somebody that's just not related to it. So how are you related to the LE side? Because you're hooked up with Charles and stuff like that.
Right. So here's where it becomes very interesting.
Okay.
So about 30 years ago, I saw a need to try and help a child. And it was my own son that was born with some medical conditions. And I saw some struggles for him later in life, and I thought that martial arts would be a good way for me to help him improve his confidence, clarity in his life, give him some self-esteem issues, help with some self-esteem issues and things along that line. So I had done a little bit of martial arts as a kid and thought that would maybe be an avenue that I would want to pursue for him. So I had a veterinary client who was a Jeet Kune Do instructor. I don't know how familiar you are with Jeet Kune Do, but that's Bruce Lee's art.
Yeah.
So I approached him and I said, hey, listen, you know the situation with my son, and I would like for us to take private lessons from you. And he said, how old is he? And he was like 3 at the time. So he says, well, no, he's too young. I don't want to pursue that. And I said, well, I feel that this would be something that would really help him. Fast forward, he comes in another couple of times into the clinic. And then finally, after the third no, I said, what would you do if that was your son? What would you do to try and help him? And kind of made it a little bit more of a personal thing with him. And he had this long pause, looked at me with a deer in the headlight look, and he said, when do you want to start? So that's what started my journey in martial arts, or at least rekindled it from the little bit of judo I did as a kid. So then, now in 2009, already teaching, or already at my black belt level, myself and another black belt are teaching Jeet Kune Do in the HEB school district. My instructor at the time is off in Russia at this point in time, and so we're carrying on the art and keeping things rolling here in the HEB area. He comes back from Russia, and I approach him in 2009, and I say, I really want to take Jeet Kune Do to a different level. Basically, when the shit hits the fan, how am I going to, employ my art? And his advice to me at that time was, I recommend that you seek out a guy. He is responsible for the Rapid Assault Tactics program for SEAL Team 6. He's in California, and I think if you want to go down that path, that is who you need to approach and who you need to try and study with. So I literally pick up the phone, call this guy, and say, here's my situation. Here's what I'm trying to accomplish. Here's my background. Here's my story. And he said, how soon can you get out to California? So that started my journey. In 2010, I was in California training with him, and ultimately became associated with that organization, where I met my current instructor who is still in California. So as I started getting involved in the rapid assault tactics, I saw a tremendous application for that in law enforcement and also in military application. So I thought maybe that's something that I would really like to do. So I came back and I thought, well, if I'm going to pursue this, maybe I should probably have my own school. So I started actually on Bedford Euless Road in Hearst, opened up a small shopping center type of environment there. We grew out of that facility, moved down the street a little bit. Ultimately, in 2014, purchased the location, the building for the school that I have now. But to answer your question about the law enforcement, I had everybody and their brother telling me it's going to be very, very difficult for you as a civilian with no military background, no law enforcement background, to get into that to where you're going to be teaching. Mm-hmm. So I kind of saw that as a lot of other times in my life where somebody would say, maybe you're not going to do something, or it's probably not going to happen, or whatnot. And so I started talking to my instructor, and I said, I really would like to get involved with law enforcement. So I was included in some teaching situations where we were doing law enforcement seminars, both in the United States and ultimately we got to India. And when I was in India, I was approached we did a Jeet Kune Do seminar, we did a women's self-defense seminar, we did training for their military and special forces. And while I was there, I was approached by a Jeet Kune Do instructor from Sri Lanka. Okay. And so this gentleman came to me and said, would you be interested in coming to Sri Lanka the following year? So this would have been 2014. So he was talking about coming to Sri Lanka in 2015. And we would like to pretty much duplicate what was done in India. So in 2015, I was in Sri Lanka doing a 2-day Jeet Kune Do seminar for his students. Mm-hmm. Did a women's self-defense seminar, and we worked with their military and special forces. And so I was invited back in 2017, and we did another pretty much a duplicate of that, did a seminar for his students, worked with women's self-defense, and then I also worked with their military and special forces. And then I was invited back in 2019 and had an opportunity to work with their special task force, which is a division of their police, predominantly guarding dignitaries. They call them the VVIPs. So that would be the equivalent of our Secret Service covering our president and other dignitaries. And also we focused a lot on the undercover narcotics division of the Special Task Force. Okay. So that's a little bit of background from the martial arts standpoint, and how I got into law enforcement. A couple years ago, I was approached by a student of mine, and he said, would you be interested in teaching at the police academy? And so I thought about that, and I thought, well, what exactly is taught out there? Is it going to be aligned with what I teach? And so I said, what I would like to do is come out and just watch some of the classes, watch the Red Man program. And that was a couple years ago, and I got hired out there. I work in the DT section, of course, predominantly ground fighting, focus on that.
So before you go, keep going, there's two things I want to touch on. One, Red Man. What he means by Red Man is somebody dresses up in a padded suit. It's a big red, it's the color of the suit, so we call it Red Man. So in a Red Man scenario, the trainee, the recruit, whatever you want to call them, their job is to effect some sort of arrest that will involve a use of force on the Red Man. So it could be something basic where they just comply and they put their hands behind their back and do something like that. Or it could be super dynamic where they're throwing leg kicks, knees, punches, but it basically protects the guy in the red suit because they're about to get beat up. And that's the whole point, is so that we can, us as instructors can evaluate that they're using effective techniques, or they're doing anything at all, where you can approach how they talk to people and things of that nature. And then what was the other part I want to say? DT stands for defensive tactics. So if you're wondering what DT instructor is, it's defensive tactics, or you'll hear us say CT, which is control tactics. It's just verbal judo that needs to be PC, so they change it every 10 years. Right. It was defensive tactics, now it's control tactics, and I'm sure they're going to drop the word tactics and change it to something else. But
matter of time.
Yeah. So I'm sorry. Keep going, sir. Okay.
So that's pretty much it. I recently, John Madden passed, and I read a quote where he said, I went from player to coach to broadcaster and never worked a day in my life. And that's exactly how I feel, because I've had 2 career paths, completely different, but there's never been a day that I have not been excited to do either one of those careers.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people, in veterinary medicine, I had an opportunity to be across the table from a lot of people over a lot of years. And Eric, if I heard once, I heard it 1,000 times. I hate my job. I can't stand the people that I work with. I hate my boss. I'm sick and tired of the drive to Dallas every day and sitting in traffic. And I'm sitting there absorbing that, thinking, I am so blessed to do what I do, because there's never been any of that. I've had wonderful people to work with, both in veterinary medicine as well as in martial arts. And I've been super, super blessed to be able to do what I feel truly I was meant to do. And a lot of people go throughout their entire life never figuring out what their chief aim is. They never figure out who they are. They never figure out what they're meant to do. And they're miserable because they're aligned with a paycheck, or they're aligned with the comfort of knowing that the bills are taken care of, and they're just going through life with this status quo level. And that's never been the case for me.
Yeah.
Ever. So,
I've got a big background in jiu-jitsu, judo, and I've dabbled in boxing. Never anything like just training on the bag with people that know what they're doing. So, right. I don't know jack about Jeet Kune Do other than what I've seen on movies, watching the Bruce Lee story, watching things like that. How, in your opinion, how well is it integrating with police side? I get the side for special forces, military, stuff like that, where it's the use of force is a lot less scrutinized, because you're fighting an enemy. Where here, we're not fighting an enemy. We're just trying to keep society peaceful. Yeah,
it's a really good question. And I think that it is what has caused me to remain in this art. There's plenty of arts out there, and I incorporate jiu-jitsu into my training as well. And I think the big difference is, if we look at some of the specific arts, whether it be boxing, Muay Thai, jiu-jitsu, wrestling, a lot of these arts tend to focus in one range of combat. So if we think about different ranges, we think about kicking range, we think about punching or striking range, we think about trapping range, we think about standing grappling, and we think about ground grappling. So the application to law enforcement, there's some of it that is philosophy based, and we'll get into that here in a little bit. And the other has to do with, what exactly is law enforcement confronted with day in and day out? Are they dealing with somebody in a particular range? Are they dealing always with one person to deal with? Is there potential for mass attack? And then, of course, the range that we haven't even mentioned is a range that may occur when a weapon is involved. So there's long, intermediate, and close range, and there's different weapons configurations, and everything that can be picked up in one or two hands can be put into one of those configurations. So how does that apply? So first of all, if you are a black belt in jiu-jitsu and you think that the answer is take that person to the ground and put him in some sort of submission, but you do not take into consideration that that person that you are going to the ground with may have an edge weapon tucked in the back, and you don't see the draw, your jujitsu goes out the window, because now you have a blade stuck in the side of your chest. And if you never train for that, if you never train for even the mindset part of dealing with that, there's fight, there's flight, and there's freeze. And you could easily get caught in that loop where you get to that point and, what in the hell am I going to do when a knife presents itself? So there's that side of it.
Yeah.
The other side of it is, I think that in my training, especially with my current instructor, there is an emphasis to approach your training to include mindset. And so I think this is a missing link. And one of the reasons that I really wanted to share this with you is I think that there needs to be more discussion on how can we include mindset in the training of a law enforcement officer.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. The difference between special force training, military training is completely different. That's a completely different agenda. We have a different level of force. We have different things that we have to worry about. We're not scrutinized by the public. We don't have the interference of the media. We don't have people passing judgment on what's going to keep us safe and what we can do and not do that have never been in a damn confrontation in their entire life. So it's a different scenario. So how can we prepare law enforcement personnel to leave their house in the morning in an abundant state of energy, without exhaustion, not taking their problems with them, in a state of calm, in a state of hyper-awareness, versus they leave their house running behind, they're exhausted, they are dealing with problems that unfortunately are coming with them that day because they were unresolved, they're depleted in their energy, and there's ways of doing that. There's ways of doing that in such a way that it's like a muscle, you can learn it. But a lot of people don't emphasize it. But I think the philosophy of Bruce Lee and how I bring Jeet Kune Do into the law enforcement is that's something that I think about regularly with my training. And the same thing is, if you look at law enforcement, military, first responders, look at the problems. Look at the reason why Charles and I are trying to help people. The divorce, suicide, depression, alcoholism, other addictions. I mean, it's not a flat line, Eric. It's like a very steep curve. Yeah. So how can we come back at the end of the day and not bring our problems, not bring the stress of that job with us how can we filter that so that we are not integrating that into our family life and causing us to have a lot of problems that we're bringing on because of a very, very high stressful job.
Yeah, it's one of those things, because I told you about my wife and I have been together 16 years, right? Coming up a couple days. And I won't say that I've discovered the secret for everybody, but I've discovered the secret that works for us. Now, you may agree, disagree, but there is no one fix for the PTSD stuff with police and military and all that stuff. But you have to give as many tools in that toolbox as you can give to help combat it throughout their career, which goes into what you're talking about with mindset and stuff like that. So for us, I saw that writing on the wall before I ever got into this career. So one of the first things that I did was I made the conscious decision that I was never going to hide anything from her of the bad stuff I saw. If it bothered me, she's going to know about it. It was just my method of figuring that out, and it's worked. Just that one thing alone has really helped out. And then other avenues, teaching rookie officers and stuff like that, just kind of passing down some knowledge, like things like that has helped me deal with my own issues. And I don't really have any issues that I know of. I'll get triggered every once in a great while by something random. And I'll tell my wife, I'm like, oh my God, they just really depressed me. And then it made me flash back to this incident. And, and she was like, geez, I'm glad I'm not a cop. I'm like, well, you're about to be a nurse, lady. You're about to see some bad stuff too. So she's going to go on to labor and delivery. That's what she wants to do. But
she'll see some drama there.
Yeah. So, But it goes into, I like that you talked about, you know, the alcoholism, the divorce rate and all that stuff, because education is the best way, the best tool we have for those just starting out, because experience is going to teach us a lot as we keep going. But education right there in the academy, if we can let them know, like, hey, your guys are going to be stuck on midnights. Guess what your diet's going to be? It's going to be fast food, or hopefully you're smart enough to pack your lunch, because nutrition is going to be a big thing. You're not going to see the sun very much. Right. So now your cortisol levels are going to skyrocket. Yeah. Your testosterone's going to drop. You're going to get home and you're going to flatline. You're not going to want to do anything.
Like living in Portland.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You're going to be, you know, just in a slump. It's what it's going to feel like when you get home. You're going to be like, I don't want to do anything. You just want to be a couch potato. And if you have a family, that's going to affect them, because when you go to work, you're way up here. Why? Because you're vigilant. You're at this hyper vigilant state. You're with your friends, you know, that you do the same job with every day, and you got to protect each other, and you got to protect the public, and you got to look out for, you know, anybody that's out to get somebody in uniform. You never know what the next traffic stop's going to be. And this is how your training's taught you over and over and over again, that, you know, these are high risk things. You need to be on edge. You need to understand. And then you get home, and then you're just done. But somebody calls you up from work, and then all of a sudden the energy comes back, because your mind, you don't know it, but your mind goes back to work, even though you're not at work. And then your spouse sees that, and your spouse is like, why are you so, you know, you don't want to do anything with your family. And as soon as one of your friends call, all of a sudden you're up here, you know, you're all excited. Right. That's, if you don't teach our officers this stuff before they become officers, they're not going to understand that. And that's going to start causing the problems. And then once the roots start to die off, that's when the alcoholism, we start trying to compensate. You know, when we work nights, it's harder to get into Jeet Kune Do class or jujitsu class or whatever it is that we're trying to do to keep up our, you know, physical fitness and mental acuity when we're at work and stuff like that. So the mental aspect is, I think it's climbing. The awareness is there with the major departments, and I'm hoping that trickle effect starts hitting the smaller departments, because I don't think the big departments are a problem. One of the things that I do, I don't mention where I work on the show. I try to keep it separate, but at the place I work, mental toughness and all of that is a major part of the academy training. You're never out of the fight. You're always in it. You know, you're always looking out for your brothers and sisters. You know, if you see a problem, report it, you know, things of that, like that. And one of the things that we do is we put them through like their second week, like they, for all intents and purposes, they get their ass kicked in a way, safely. So I'm not sure how they do it at the academy that you've been at, but we'll physically exhaust them, and then, you know, doing cardio and, you know, stuff like that, Metcons. And then we bring them in, they get 3 minutes on the ground with an instructor. And they see just how deep the water goes on the mats. Right. And then, as soon as they're done with that, then they jump over to a boxing ring and they fight a classmate, same size and weight. You know, we try to get as close as we can. They're so spent by that time, and then we basically judge who fought better. The better fighter has to keep going, because we want the person that's too gassed or, you know, just didn't get the better of it to get a chance to catch his breath for a second. But then they fight against an instructor, and there's no time limit on that. We just want to see, we're checking to see, are they still trying to think? Are they still, you know, are they so exhausted? Are they just rolling over? Are they giving up? Like, and then we show them, we're recording the whole time. And then we show them that later. Like, look, you were exhausted. You thought you were done. You got tagged by the instructor. You're on the ground, and you learned that you're not out. You're not made of glass. You're not gonna die. So stay in the fight. Like I said, it's a tool for us as instructors. See who's already got heart. See who we may have to try to instill some confidence to get heart and understand. And and then it's twofold for the recruits, because now they realize, man, I went through the ringer, you know, as safely as possible. It's not going to be the same in the street necessarily, but it gives them a good cue to see where they're at and how much work they think they need to do. Or it may be a wake-up call. We've had a lot quit.
Right.
No, this ain't for me.
This isn't my cup of tea.
And I've got more respect for a person that's able to do that than they go through the academy and they get out in the police life and then they're like, oh, no, this ain't for me.
Yeah.
You know, they knew well before, but they wanted a job rather than a career. So, but yeah, I'm with you, man, on the just the mental aspect of police, not just policing, but life in general.
Absolutely. And you know, as you were talking, it made me think about another thing that is incorporated in that. And we work really, really heavily with them on understand the importance of them managing their breath. Yeah. So we'll open up a law enforcement seminar or a military seminar with a drill. We'll give the participants a rubber baton, and we will tell them to knife spar for a 3-minute round. That's all we tell them.
Okay.
And because they are doing something that is unique to them, and because their mind is telling them that rubber baton is a knife, most of them will have a tremendous mismatch between their O2 and their CO2.
Oh, yeah.
So they're either hyperventilating or hypoventilating. And both of those, as you know, are patterns that are not sustainable over a long period of time. So you can be the best martial artist in the world, or you can be the best boxer, or you can be the best on the ground. But if you do not know how to remain calm and you do not know how to manage your breath and stay in the present moment, you are going to gas out. So this is something else that I don't think people put enough emphasis on. I never hear anybody talking about it in the academy. We do. I do. And I think it's important because if they can remain calm and avoid panic, they're already way ahead of a lot of the other people out there. Now, if they can stay in the present moment and not worry about what is yet to be or what has already happened and manage their breath, that's a whole different game for them.
Yeah, typically the way that I put it to our guys is confidence creates safe officers.
Sure.
Unconfident officers means you're poorly trained. You're not trained to a level that you're confident. You're not confident in your own training. And when you're not confident in your own training, hesitation starts, and breath control and all that stuff just starts to go out the window, because now, like you said, flight or fight or freeze are all three factors that are probably going to happen. And that 0 to 5 year officer is the most susceptible to that type of scenario. So with good training and continuous training, because you've been doing academy, you know, as an instructor, I've been an academy instructor 3 years. What you get in the academy is a good start.
Yeah.
But you ain't done.
No.
You're not done.
No.
If you're not, these are all perishable skills. You know, I've been out of jiu-jitsu now probably 2 years. I can tell you right now, as I'm a mid-level belt, purple belt, I'll probably be a purple belt for life because I have a busy life right now and I can't dedicate the time that it takes to get ranked up. But if I go in there right now today and shoot, you know, there's probably some high-level white belts, you know, blue belts that would have a field day with me.
Yeah.
And
You've done nothing to maintain over the last couple of years.
Because it's a perishable skill.
Exactly.
And, you know, I try to keep my mind fresh on that, but I still watch, you know, like Brandon McCaffrey, he's one of my favorite instructors. He's out in Alabama. It's at 10th Planet School, I think. I watch him quite a bit and all the stuff he's got going on. But there's a mental aspect to keep some sort of sharpness, you know, still see that it's like a kata for the mind.
Right.
And that's ways that I try to keep my skills up when I know I can't make it to the gym. But as far as the police side of things for you, as an instructor, I know I've learned, like, I've incorporated my jiu-jitsu to, I've got the benefit of, you know, 17 years of law enforcement behind learning jiu-jitsu. So when I teach it and the way that we teach it, it's law enforcement oriented, where we still have that, you know, long, intermediate, short range. If I'm in close, I'm going to stay in close type thing. But if I'm mid-range or distance, jiu-jitsu is not my friend at that time. because I can get caught coming in. That's not a risk I want to have when I got a gun belt on. They'll have access to all my Batman tools if I'm wrong.
Exactly.
Or if I screw up. So you're right. We need to have different tools for different scenarios. And how much effort do you think it takes for an officer to keep that sharpness going?
I think a lot, because, the vast majority of them, probably 98% of them, leave the academy and there's no additional training.
Right. Or you'll get maybe a 40-hour class.
Maybe what's required of the agency, but very, very few do we see actually go on and do something to maintain that skill. And like you said, it's a perishable skill.
Yep.
With respect to the ground, we have to include that in the training, but as a law enforcement officer, I don't want you going to the ground for all the reasons that you can think of, and then some more.
Yep.
So, you've got the ground inhibiting your movement. You've got the duty belt and all of that tools. That person has access to those tools if they get in close proximity to you. You don't know what weapon they have on them. There's no ref. There's no time limit. There's no rules. And how about Johnny bringing some of his buddies that you don't see coming up on your six?
Yeah.
The mass attack situation. So for you to go to the ground is, not something, but yet at the same time, sometimes to control somebody, if you're already in close, that may be the best and safest thing to do. And then utilize your tools once you get that person to where you can manage them. And it's not a one size fits all. I mean, let's face it, a 5'3" female officer is not going to have the same tools available to her that somebody that is 220 pounds in very, very good shape and also has training.
Yeah.
But we can train the mindset of that person. We can give them ways to solve problems, and they're going to be different than maybe how I would solve a problem or how you would solve a problem. And they may have to access their secondary tools more and utilize, or less, more, and continue to utilize their primary tools. The computer between their head and their officer presence and their situational awareness and all of those type of things that are going to trump the ability to maybe have to use some of these other more aggressive tools. But it's not a one size fits all. And getting back to Jeet Kune Do, if we just focus on just the ground, well, what about the other ranges that we have to deal about? And then what kind of training do we need to do? How can we best train that person to deal with those things? And I think it really boils down to there's two types. You have to have self-perfection training. You have to have things that are going to develop your attributes, footwork, timing, speed, sensitivity, all of that. But then if you never field test that, if you never put that to the functionality of how do I do this when I no longer have a cooperative training partner, I no longer have somebody holding an arm out or staying still while I do an armbar to a takedown on them, that's not realistic, because that'll go out the door if you can't do it under stress, if you can't do it under resistance, if you can't do it with people cussing, spitting, kicking, punching, and Johnny bringing some of his friends entering in.
Yeah.
So all of that has to be part of it. You have to have self-preservation training. What do you do when the shit hits the fan and you're in a confrontation? And then how are you going to develop your attributes to the point where you can have an advantage?
Yeah. Yep. I've made a plea out there, because like I said, you go through the academy and that's it. That's the bulk of your academy, or your control tactics, defensive tactics training. And you understand, I understand that that's a perishable skill and that you need to continue that. And I tell people, just at a minimum, if you can give an hour, 2 hours a week, because people don't want to talk about this, but the training that people want from their police, there's barely enough time in their life to, between that and family to accomplish all this stuff. And the resources it takes and stuff like that. So, between doing enough for control tactics, let's say 1 to 2 hours a week minimum. And I would recommend more than that, especially your first few years. And then you have cultural diversity training. You have CPR training. You have CIT, critical, what is that? Crisis intervention training.
Mm-hmm.
Drug interdiction training, human trafficking signs and symptoms, basic fire training, medical training, self-aid buddy care training, using an AED training. The list goes, sexual harassment training. I mean, I keep going and going and going, so you got all these classes. It's just constant legislative updates that happen. In-house training, the stuff that, policies and procedures, you got to keep up on that. So you got all this training in a career field that's kind of looked at as a blue collar career field. That's hard to say. So how do you convince people to be cops anymore, especially with all the scrutiny they're getting? And then two, you really don't understand the amount of continuous training that you're trying to mandate.
Yeah.
And I can't legitimately expect officers to be proficient in a martial art in the field if there's no outlet provided by that department. And what I said was, rather than, spending X amount of dollars here, get with your local community, find out your martial arts schools that the city approves of, like in our academy, we teach, they teach boxing skills, using kicks, using punches, some Muay Thai stuff thrown in there, some jiu-jitsu stuff thrown in there, judo, wrestling. There's, it's pretty much the spirit, from what I understand, of Jeet Kune Do, which was, why limit yourself to one art? Let's bring them all in and take the best of everything. And that's kind of how we teach. And I want the department to say, all right, well, we're going to invest this amount of dollars, and you'll have a attendance requirement that you have to meet with your first 2 years. And that will get you to a level that I think could carry you through your career. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's a real popular opinion, but to me, who I see the importance of officer safety and things of that nature, and not just officer safety. I'm sure you can attest to this as well. A well-trained person can keep the bad guy safe.
110%.
So if I can keep him safe and alive and me safe and alive, that's the best scenario, because then I don't have to deal with any fallout. Right. I don't want to have to go through fallout and people, cops are out there just trying to hurt and kill people. No, the ones that I work with aren't. And it's, one, because they're good people. They don't want that to happen. But two, it ain't worth it.
Yeah.
It ain't worth it. Why go through all that? I ain't trying to make my life harder. Yeah. Trying to go to work.
That's a lot to live with for a long time.
Yeah.
And it's hard to get away. Well, I could talk an hour just commenting on some of what you just said. And right. I guess starting with, why would somebody want to pursue a career in law enforcement? And from the outside looking in, especially from my vantage point, I would have to say, why on earth would somebody want to subject themselves to that at this point in time? And it comes back to what I said a little while ago. You've got people that are criticizing you. You've got people that are judging you. You have people that are weighing in on what you should do and what you shouldn't do to try and keep yourself safe, that don't have the first clue about what your job entails. The other thing is, if we look at the second part of your conversation, and that is opportunities for law enforcement personnel to get training, you're absolutely right. There is an entire list of what that would look like. And if we just take defensive tactics as a single piece of that ladder that you just talked about, I think the big victory is trying to figure out how we can take the apathy of these individuals and turn it around to where they truly see the need. How can we make them assassinate that part of their brain that tells them that they do not need that training? So one of the things that we do is any cadet that is in the police academy, while they're in the police academy, they can come and train at our school free of charge.
Nice.
We do that because we want to help them to install the neural pathways and have more reps trying to help them get there. so that there's less of that active pause that when they have to go through Red Man, but not just Red Man. You know, what happens the day that they leave and they're with an FTO officer and they have never seen an event that's about to happen. You know, it's another opportunity. We also have a 2-hour every other Sunday law enforcement class, and we cover everything. We do ground, we do stand-up, and we do weapons. Why? Because that's what I believe we need for the street. And then if we never talk about mindset, if we never talk about staying in the present moment, if we ever talk about breathing, if we ever never talk about these things, then they're ill-prepared, because there's still all of the other that goes along with that you so eloquently talked about. So I think a lot of it is there's plenty of opportunities. There's plenty of dojos. There's plenty of gyms where they could get training. But there's too many people that think when they leave the academy that they've had all the training that they need. And then when they get in their first use of force and they find that they don't know a thing about what to do, now they're scrambling. But still, sometimes those people don't go and seek out, you know, where's the source? Where am I going to find help getting myself more prepared?
Yep. And I don't mean to cut you off, but part of the issue with police work is you're dealing with alphas for the most part. It's the mentality type to do the job. If you're not willing to be confrontational, then you're not going to do that job. You're not going to do it well, and you're probably going to get hurt. Right. So alpha, ego almost go hand in hand for the untrained mind. So when you've probably seen it a million times, you get that alpha that comes into the gym, comes into your dojo, and they ain't top dog anymore.
No.
And they come in and they get humbled, and the ego can't handle it. And then they never come back. Yeah. And I see that a lot with officers. That they'll come in and they'll either think that their past training or their idea of what they're capable of is nowhere near what they're capable of. And that turns them right off. They won't return, and they won't go to another gym because they don't want to go through that humbleness portion that I think is one of the best benefactors of martial arts, is because you're practicing murder every day. You know, that's the way I look at jiu-jitsu. We're out there rolling, and I'm trusting you to, you know,
be a good training partner.
Choke, snap, or tap me.
Yeah.
But in reality, what you're really doing is you're practicing breaking my bones. You're practicing choking me unconscious, killing me. You know, you could. I'm putting a lot of trust into you, but at the same time, you're doing the same with me. And we're realizing that, you know, like, oh man, you know, every time we tap, that was another that, like, I was done, and it just. I think it kills exactly what you said, assassinates that part of your mind that shows like, okay, like I got more work to do. I got more work to do. And then you keep rolling with the bigger sharks, and you just that's how you start to progress.
And it's amazing to watch the people that actually incorporate training and put emphasis on that. I've got a female officer that trains regularly at the school, both privately and in a group setting. And she's been involved in 3 or 4 use of force scenarios since she left the academy. Did very, very good. And I think that it comes back to what you were saying. Sometimes the level of confidence you have from your training causes you to be able to keep something from escalating to a point. And whether it be how you carry yourself, whether it be the perception of the subject as they're hearing you deliver a message to them, whatever it is, I think that is in part what we get from our training, is the confidence that comes along with that. Be able to take and escalate your level of violence to deal with what's coming at you, but also to be able to ratchet that down.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times have we seen videos, and albeit they may be portions of videos and we don't get to see the whole thing, but we don't have the ability to, once the threat is no longer there, to de-escalate.
To dial it back, yeah.
Yes, sir, dial it back. And this is something else that has to be trained. It has to be taught. It has to be practiced. Mm-hmm. And if you're not incorporating some of that into your training, it will never happen when it needs to.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and it's also we really need to hold instructors accountable. That's the big one with our instructors. And not all departments have the luxury of having guys like you or guys like me. I know all the guys that I worked with have some, major level of martial art or several martial arts or whatever. Like, down where I'm at, I have at least 2 black belts, one in jiu-jitsu, one in judo. We had a Marine Corps boxer. He could have went pro. So, I mean, we got all these different
resources.
Resources available.
It's beautiful.
But then you go to a smaller department and, they're taking, Officer Snuffy, they're putting him through the Gracie combatives, and they go to be, train the trainer type thing or instructor school, but that ain't enough.
Yeah.
Like, that's not enough. You don't, the bad part about martial arts is it's not an overnight thing. And it can't be.
It's a marathon.
It's long. I mean, I'm still learning, I still show up. I still do the things. And I'm constantly just like, oh my God. And we're talking years. I started in jiu-jitsu in 06. And so that's just me as an officer learning this stuff. And then coming out as an instructor, I start seeing other instructors, from other counties and states and stuff like that, doing joint training and stuff. And I'm like, these poor souls they don't know what they don't know. And now how do we get the message out to these instructors? Like, look, you need to instill these factors into these guys. Like, it's teaching them the moves is great. And as long as they keep plugging away, they'll kind of understand it. But until you start focusing and emphasizing on mindset and the why behind the things, the moves is one thing, but the why behind is everything.
Yeah, we were talking the other day at the academy about, we have a finite amount of time in the academy to expose them to a whole lot of information.
Yeah.
And if we look at PPCT, if we look at defensive tactics, during the course of a 20 or 21 week program, there's only going to be so much time that we can start to implement some of those concepts. And there's going to be only so much that we can do to drill it, to rep it. Mm-hmm. But once again, if we come back to our conversation from before, we're doing that with a compliant training partner. We're doing that without resistance. We're doing that not really with movement. We're just trying to get the concept and get the basic idea.
Yeah.
And this is what people don't understand is they kind of discover the cause of their own ignorance when they get out and realize that they really didn't know it because they've never functionalized it from the standpoint of, how do I do this with stress? How do I do this with exhaustion? How do I do this with people that are not trying to help me accomplish this? And it's a different training altogether.
Yeah, because in the academy, for those that don't know, the students are stressed all the time.
Yeah.
That doesn't make for a very good mind to absorb. It kind of narrows it, opposed to doing some training on your own. Now it's your dime, your time. You're more relaxed. You're open to it, and you're spending your money to do it. So you're more apt to do better. So that's another benefit of continuous training outside. But when you're in the academy, you're so stressed out. And then each academy is different. Everyone runs their academies different. I hate block training because it's more apt to the problems that you're talking about. You don't get a chance to have it amp it up, show resistance. Where I work, the academy is the entire length, or the CT portion is the entire length of the academy. We start day one. You're on the mats. We start getting the basics, fighting stances, all that. Yeah. So, and it continues, and it's a progressive thing where by the end, you're basically going through scenarios that are full fights. It's protected, but you're getting full resistance. You're learning how to think through, and you're realizing that just because you know a move doesn't mean you know a move. It's right. Because everybody's resistance is different and abilities are different. So, it's important, like you said, if you're not getting that, but that block training stuff, you do 4, 12 weeks, whatever it is, and then you move on through the academy. and you never go back to that.
It's hard to see it integrated.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to bring it all together.
Yeah, but like I said, you don't know what you don't know. And if you've never seen an academy that runs it from day one all the way through, then it might not be something on your radar. Or if you don't realize like I said, if the instructors, again, we're going into that, just because you have a certification doesn't make you, and just because you have we've seen these McDojos out there. You got these people just handing out belts and practicing stopping people with chi and all this crazy nonsense. If you believe in chi stoppage stuff, come see me. I'll show you that it doesn't stop a fist. So you got all these crazy people out there teaching stuff, and if you don't know and you're an officer and you're like, oh, I'll go to this local school, it's fairly cheap, and then you think that crap's going to work. There's
some voodoo and hoodoo out there, but there's also some good schools. And whether it doesn't matter what art, just get doing something. I mean, for some of these people, just the exercise, the physical aspect of it alone would help.
Yeah.
We see a lot of Budweiser tumors in the law enforcement profession.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of apathy with regard to just general health and well-being. So
I tell my officers, I'm like, you're going to be on midnights, buy a kettlebell. 20 pound, 35 pound. It doesn't have to be heavy.
Sure.
And when you're at a standstill in the middle of the night and there's nothing going on, jump out of your car real quick, knock out 10 minutes. Yeah. I promise you, it's an ass whipping.
Yeah.
So, because you're not going to get time to do anything else.
Yeah.
So it's a big deal. And you're right. Nothing drives me more insane than when I pull up and see, just a sloppy officer that,
let himself go. Yeah.
And
not going to work too good in a chase scene.
No. Oh my God. And you'll hear some of the old school officers that, I will say they've earned the belly. They've been out there a long time, and they're like, I don't need to chase nobody.
That's good if you're pushing paper.
Right.
Maybe not so good in a patrol car.
Right. Yeah. And that's what I say. I'm like, dude, you're still on the street.
Yeah.
I don't care necessarily that you're going to be a liability to yourself if that's what you want, because heart attacks are one of the top killers of cops. But if I become a liability because I'm trying to save your ass or vice versa or whatever, like I don't, that's no bueno with me. I don't like that.
Sure.
So yeah, I'm not telling you, and I'm out of shape right now. I haven't worked out in like 5 months. I got the COVID at one point, and then I couldn't get myself back to where I was at. So I'm trying to get back to it. I knocked out some air squats and lunges and push-ups the other day.
It's a start.
Yeah, I'm letting the soreness kind of work itself out.
That's a start.
Yeah. So the other stuff you want to touch, you got more on that, or did you want to touch on the thing with you and Charles and all that and dive in?
It's up to you, man. You're running the show.
Hey, I'm just a facilitator, sir. But yeah, I'm curious about that because I know Charles works a lot. Mental health, and the PTSD and all that is a huge draw on this show. Like because I'll ask members all the time, hey, what are you guys interested in? What type of shows you want me to book? And top of the list every time. Mental health training, mental health this, mental health that.
So where this came from is not only seeing the application from the law enforcement officers that I know, but also in my school. So I have I think he's 71-year-old submariner, Navy submariner.
Oh, okay.
And he and I have become pretty close, and he has shared some of his struggles, post leaving the Navy. Mm-hmm. I've got a 20-year Navy SEAL that is a student at the school, also helps me with the law enforcement class. I train his son privately as well as in a group setting. So got to know him. And then I've got a mother of a young kid that I train who is a Army veteran, lost a leg in combat. And then we just added, of course, there's Charles. So he's got the law enforcement background, certainly saw his share of trauma and, brings that element of experience to it. So there was Charles. And then we recently added a retired firefighter. So we've got first responder, we've got military, and we've got law enforcement. The stories, as I hear these people talk, really, really tug at my heartstrings. Mm-hmm. And, you cannot imagine the pain, the trauma that these people have experienced. And I would never, ever hope to begin to understand that, because I've never been there. And I think in hearing their stories, when people reach out, some of the people that are trying to help, whether it be a psychologist, whether it be a family therapist, whether it be a psychiatrist, you'll hear them tell these people, well, I understand what you're going through. But they have no clue.
Right.
I mean, they have medical knowledge of how to help them. They have ways of giving them resources and tools, but never have their shoes been the same shoes.
Right.
And so as I started hearing these stories and I started being around more of these individuals, I started wondering what tools are available for these people locally. And I reached out to every one of those people that I just shared with you and said, would you be interested? I have a thought that I would like to start a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and I want it to be in this area, and I want to provide a safe environment for people that have been in this situation. First responders, law enforcement, military, whether they be retired or whether they be active, it doesn't matter.
Right.
There's a problem, and we need to try and fix it. So that caused us to get together as a group and brainstorm. What do we want to do? How are we going to help these people? What resources would we do? How would we bring them together? What activities would we plan? And so we're like 3 or 4 meetings out. We've had, I think, about every 6 weeks, 8 weeks a meeting, and I think we just completed our 3rd one. I've met with attorneys and accountants on how moving forward does this happen?
Yeah.
How do we start the business? How do we get the 501c3 status? But that's where we are, and I'm excited about it because not only the people that I'm working with, I have a tremendous affinity for these individuals, but their stories are unbelievably amazing. And if we can help one person, if we can save one person, if we can create an environment for one person to feel like they can come and be a part of an organization where the people in the room actually understand what they've been through, as opposed to maybe a medical personnel saying, I understand where you're coming from, but they haven't been in combat. They haven't witnessed a tragic accident. They haven't held onto a child that's dying in a car wreck, and somebody trying to get somebody out of a burning house. They haven't experienced any of that. And those are things that are not going to leave you. They're imprinted in your brain, and you hang on to the emotions that are tied in with them. And, how do you deal with that? So what resources could we provide, and how can we come together as a group of people to make this happen? And that's the hopefully the victory down the road.
Yeah, and that's one of the arguments or reasons I tell people, because you pointed out, he's like, if you help just one person, it's worth it.
It's absolutely worth it.
And that's why I do this. If it helps one person, whether it's law enforcement or civilian side,
it's worth your time.
It's worth my time. So I've had the awesome encounters of having people reach out to me from Washington State and Washington, D.C. Those were the 2 farthest points. I had both people reach out to me from about the same episode. It was kind of cool. And talking about how they were, there was an officer that was involved in a shooting. He's a sergeant now, but Sergeant Anderson's shooting. And he basically had a post-traumatic issue while we were recording. He thought he's past it. That's why he wanted to come on and talk. I'll come on and talk about the shooting. Da, 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 da. He's like, hopefully people can learn.
And I think you should be very proud of that. I mean, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And for you to be doing this, I think is an opportunity for you to be part of the solution for these people. Yeah. And give them the fact that you had those individuals reach out and be willing to share says a lot about the effect of what your program is doing.
Yeah,
I think it's great.
Yeah. It's definitely like you said, I'm sure at your school, like when you start, you see the light bulb go off. That's so satisfying as an instructor. You're like, yeah, he's getting it now. And you see they're hooked, like, oh, okay, I can do this. And, they're starting to build up the confidence. And that's so fun. I like watching the building process. And, I've got guys that I got into jiu-jitsu that just destroy me now. Like I can't hold it because they stuck with it and just went full bore. And it's awesome. Like for me, that's great. And I've had people reach out to me about the show. They're like, hey, I'm doing a podcast too. I hope I'm not trying to do I'm like, do exactly what I do. I don't care. Do exactly how I'm doing the show.
It's another way to reach out to somebody.
It's another way. Because if people don't like me, but they like you. Yeah. You can just take all the same guests I had. I don't mind. Yeah. I just want the message to get out there. I want to try to help people. That's it. So, and share perspective and education, there might be some people that watch the show. Oh, Jeet Kune Do is bullshit. Okay.
That's all right.
That's fine. But you know what? At least you got to hear why he does what he does and why, all the mindset behind it. And I agree with everything you're saying. I don't
lose sleep over those people.
Yeah, I know. I don't either. And it's the same people that have never done any sort of martial art ever. Right. And I've told I did the karate thing as a kid, and I'll fully admit the karate that I took when I was a kid was probably taught me just enough to get my ass kicked, but it wouldn't be something. But I did take good tools from there. There was stuff that I could take from that, and it's the same with jiu-jitsu. There's things that I'm not out there heel hooking people in the streets. I'm not going to do that. It's great in a tournament, it's a quick way to end a match, but I ain't using that. So when I do my training, I look for the stuff that I know applies to what I do in the field. Now, I may get my ass kicked at school quite a bit, but that's because I refuse to train in stuff for myself on a free roll, or a sparring match, whatever you want to call it. I refuse to train in something that I know I'm not going to do in the street because it will put me in a bad way. Right. So, I try not to be on my back. I try to have top control the best I can. So I've got a quick out if I need to, and
I think that's a good plan.
I think it's a great plan. Yeah. Neon belly is my favorite technique.
Transition to a safer place.
Yeah. And switch to my Batman belt if I need. Right. Or run.
Yeah, exactly.
I tell people all the time, like, it's a tactical retreat. Right. You're not running, you're not stopping and leaving the situation completely. But if you're out of the fight, now who's going to defend the public? Yeah. So, sometimes you got to do a tactical retreat to reassess and come back and do what you got to do. So don't be afraid to run away. I've had a guy with a knife. I walked around my patrol car.
That's the best plan, Ron.
Yeah. Yeah. He had the knife out. I had plenty of distance. He's probably 60 feet away when I saw the knife. Mm-hmm. And I immediately went behind my car. Getting in my car wasn't an option at the time because I would have to get my key. I had locked the door. Right. So I had to get my key out. So I just stayed on the car. And then he starts approaching, and I'm like, he's not going to get to me. And as soon as he tries to jump on the car, he's getting tased. Yeah. Because then I know I had time, I train people like a knife is a deadly force situation. Should have your gun out.
Right. But, knife equals gun.
Yeah. So there's situations that you can assess because your eyes on the ground. And if you're confident in your training, like I said, transition, use your taser if you feel confident, but just be aware if it fails that you need to be ready. So, because they do fail. But your program, I like that. Are you guys? Is it like Is it going to be a website? Is it going to be what's the?
So the name of the group that we've chosen is Saving Our Heroes Network, and we've already started thinking about what does the website look like, getting information about who we are. Where are the people that make up the board? How does that apply to them? Where are they coming from? What tools would be available? What events would be coming up? The other thing we talked a lot about was how can we maybe, because we wouldn't have the established maybe confidence in the organization at this point, just getting started, how can we piggyback on to existing delineated organizations that are already out there, and maybe some of the things that we would do initially would be to help them fund their cause, and then as we grow, have it be more of an individual thing on our part.
Yeah.
So this is we're in the formative stages. I mean, we're walking or crawling right now as we try to figure this out, and all of us have the right mindset that we think it's a good thing and we want to do it. And like you said, if it helps one person, then it'll be worth our effort.
Right. Yeah. Well, you guys got my platform, so if you need to help get your message out, I can put some stuff out there.
Nice.
It's not the biggest platform in the world, but
doesn't matter.
It's you're not starting from scratch. Yeah. So you know what I mean?
Right.
People send stuff all the time. They're like, hey, do you mind if I post this? I'm like, go for it.
Right.
Like, as long as it's not something immoral or unethical, go for it.
Right.
Like, I don't do politics, and
good.
And I don't do religion.
Good for you.
I don't do either of those two things. If you want to come on and God's blessed me or whatever, that's fine.
Sure.
Everybody's got their own belief, but I don't. This is not this show platform is not for conflict necessarily. It's to bridge gaps. So
I learned at a very early age, don't have discussions about religion or politics.
No.
And I've adhered to that throughout my entire life.
And don't let people borrow money.
Don't let people borrow money.
No.
Yeah. What is it? The memory of the borrower doesn't exceed the memory of the lender.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. If I got family or friends that are asking to borrow money, I'm like, how much do you need? Okay. I'm going to gift you this. If full amount, half amount, quarter amount, doesn't matter. I'm going to gift you this. I don't need the money back. And
there you go.
Then you have no issues later in life.
That's good. That's a good way to do it.
Because I've seen it happen within my own family. Lending of money.
Sure.
I'm just like, sure. Even the people that lended the money, are like afterwards, like when that person's away, they're like, that's probably a bad idea. It's going to cause. And sure, it does end up causing issues. But all right, so. Do you want to promote your school at all? I mean, are you hurting for students?
No, we're not hurting for students.
But it's always good to have more, right?
Yeah. The name of the school is Dallas-Fort Worth Jeet Kune Do. We're actually in Hearst on Pipeline. And
so that's false advertisement right off the bat.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
I'm just kidding. I know Hearst is surrounded by all of these areas. So.
I think the best way to build a school is word of mouth, but I think that's the best way in any business. You can do all the advertising you want in the world, but I think people that are happy with your services, people that think that your heart's in the right place, are going to tell people about you. Yeah, and I used to allow people to come in and, come in for a period of time and check it out. I started to realize that when I heard people saying to me, like, I'd ask, how'd you find out about our school? And they would say, well, I went down to this place down the road. And I just didn't really get a good feel. I said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, I walked in there. They told me when the classes were, how much they were, and they asked me when I wanted to sign up. And I knew that I did not want to run a school like that. Mm-hmm. So I started to require every student that had an interest in the school, whether it's law enforcement, whether it's the fighting on the ground, whether it's Kali, whether it's striking, whatever, to have an interview. And I think there's two really, really important reasons for this. Number one, a lot of people pursue martial arts because of courage, confidence, and clarity issues in their life. And if you get to talking to them and you learn their story, you start to realize how accurate that is. Yeah. The second thing is it gives me a real good feel for the energy of the person. So if somebody comes in and they're bad-mouthing people, or I look at them up on Facebook and, obviously it's not somebody that I want to align with. Yeah. It makes it really, really easy to ferret that out. Yeah. And when I usually spend a minimum of an hour talking to somebody. When you sit down and have an hour conversation, you learn a lot. You learn a lot about them. They learn some about you. And for sure, in the course of that conversation, often people, through opening up and feeling like they have somebody that they can confide in, will start to share why they are there. And it is a lot of times because of one of those three things I mentioned. Yeah, and that's what I tell people about this. They're like, man, your show's so long. Like, dude, you should cut it into portions, or you should do this, you should do that. I'm like,
listen, the most important thing for me is I have conversations daily. Like, that's part of my job. I know how to talk to people, and I'm a bullshit reader. Like, that's just my job.
Yep.
Like, I figured that out, you know. I can, and I'm not 100%, but I'm damn close.
Yeah.
And when you get to, like, you come on here and we're talking, you know, we're at an hour and 20 minutes already. So if you came in here and you were fake, it's easy to be fake for 10, 20 minutes, I guess. But for an hour, for 2 hours, sometimes 3 hours,
might be tough.
You can't fake your personality. And then we're really going to get to the meat and potatoes of who you are. And, you know, and that's one of the important parts is I want people to buy into you, whether it's good or bad, but it's you. It's not this fake personality. So the same with what you're doing is like, yeah, it's cool. You can come in, sit down and say for 10 minutes, you know, why'd you pick us? What'd you come here for? And they're going to give you some BS and you'll be out the door and they'll be in your school the next day. And then they're screwing with the mojo of the students later on. Or you can take the time and really vet, because they're vetting you. Why not vet your students? Yeah. You know, it's going to make you a better instructor to them because now you know their background, you know, okay, he's got a little training and, you know, he's kind of got this eagerness to him. Like I can see the wheels turning. Or are you going to get this next one? He's like, all right, he's dumb as a box of rocks and he's just looking to work out. Yeah. So, okay, now I know what I got to do.
So, exactly.
Yeah. So I think that's smart. Not many people do that.
And, you know, it's amazing some of the stories that you hear. Yeah, it really almost tear jerking sometimes when you're sitting across from somebody and they're opening up because, you know, everybody has a timeline and your timeline is different than my timeline. But those events and those stories and those happenings along those timelines are tied in with emotions. And sometimes those emotions don't go away. Yeah. They're stuffed. They're stuffed here. And so people that have not ever experienced how to deal with that, they're on this merry-go-round. And they never, ever resolve the fear, the anxiety, the shame, the hurt, the anger, because they haven't figured out a way to deal with it. Yeah. And so if martial arts is a vehicle to help that person deal with it, then that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and you very rarely, it does happen. I won't say it never happens, but a trained martial artist, and then like you said, it could be any. You don't hear of a lot of problems with those people.
And they're generally good people.
Right. Yeah. You know, I tell people, they're like, oh man, I bet you kick ass when you're doing your police work. I'm like, since I got trained, I very rarely ever run across any situations that have happened to me. Now, I've had situations a lot where you run in and you're trying to help another officer because they're into something. But to me, it doesn't happen. I don't know if it's the way I carry myself. I don't know if it's the things I say. I don't know what it is, but I can tell you the people that I know I would never mess with. It's those two things. It's the way they talk and the way they carry themselves. I'm like, you know, I can look at you and I already know just the way you walked up here, your posture. You can handle himself. Like you can see it. It's hard to describe. And if you don't train, it's not necessarily something you're going to cue in on. But through the course of my job, you know, I can look at people. I'm like, all right, this dude could be a problem for me. Right. Don't want to get too close, or you know, or vice versa. You know, they're so big, like I don't want to be at range, so I got to get in real close because I don't want their power to hit me. So, there's just certain aspects that you start to pick up and develop as you go. And I'm not preaching to the choir, you know this, but for anybody else, sure. But okay, so how long has your school been open? I'm just curious.
So let's see, California 2010, came back from California, opened it up. So coming up on 12 years.
Nice.
Yeah.
Dang.
And then the building that we're in, we purchased that building in 2014. So been on pipeline there since 2014.
Nice. Do you guys do anything out in the communities or anything like that? Or is it strictly
No, yeah, I say no. We do free women's self-defense seminars. We've done that before. Yeah. I've done some free law enforcement seminars, so that would be a way of reaching out from a community standpoint.
Yeah.
We have occasional fight night, and we'll open it up to students' families and things of that nature, where they can come and watch a UFC fight at the school and
Very cool.
interact and that sort of thing.
That's awesome. Yeah. I bring it up because the schools that I see that really make it and kill it is just for those reasons. They do the little extra things. You have a fight night, put up on the projector, whatever it is, or you have a car wash, whatever. It gets people. You're getting word of mouth out there. The students are learning, especially the younger students are learning how to talk to people and stuff like that. Yeah. Because to me, martial arts is more than just, especially for kids. It's more than just, learning how to defend yourself. You're trying to teach them how to, socially, what is the word? Have social skills and things that, because as a kid, you don't. Yeah. I was the worst. Like, you'd think I was a talker as a kid. I was pretty shy. And it was martial arts that kind of opened that up for me. My dad is a judo black belt.
Nice.
He's nationally ranked for, I think he's, God, I don't know my own dad's age. I think he's like 58, 59. I think he's 59.
He's young.
Yeah.
Youngster.
So, yeah, he's 59. Yeah, I always tell him he was a sinner. Him and my mom had me real young, so.
He's a sinner.
Yeah. And, but yeah, he's a black belt in judo, and just having that resource, I didn't want to do what he did. Mm-hmm. I wanted to do something different.
But I guarantee you got some information from him.
Man, yeah. Judo was, there's nothing like, dealing with a bully and the next thing they know, they're looking up at the sky and
hip throwing them.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. And that was a huge confidence booster for a shy kid. Yeah. So, but learning how to talk, yes sir, no sirs, and stuff like that. Because my dad lived down here. I grew up with my mom in Michigan. They never married. So and then my stepdad, great guy, I say I'm lucky. I had two dads, but he worked second shift, so I didn't see him a whole lot either. And he wasn't an athlete or into that stuff. He was older, arthritis ridden type stuff. So like that aspect of things I didn't get that. So the talking to people and whatnot, I had to learn it somewhere.
Yeah, we focus on this in the kids program. I said, anybody can teach you how to punch and kick. That's not, my goal.
You can go on YouTube.
You can go on YouTube. Yeah.
Right.
But to give them confidence, like a new kid that comes into the school, they have to stand up front with me. Every child that is current student has to go up, look them in the eye, shake their hand, introduce themselves, and then the new student has to respond, hi, my name is, and then, fill in the blank. This is the very, very first step to them understanding, what am I going to get out of this program?
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you do that with the adults too?
No, it's more making sure that you introduce yourself. Don't have somebody, walking around here trying to figure out where to put their stuff, where the bathrooms are. You need to take the initiative when they walk in the front door and greet them and make them feel welcome.
Yeah. Do you guys wear
no.
Nothing, just grappling stuff?
Yeah, so if you look at Jeet Kune Do, it's a street art, so, we want them, what they're going to have on in the street, so we don't. And the ground fighting that we do is pretty much ground fighting for the street, and so incorporating some of the things like weapons, and so it's no-gi.
Yeah. Do you have any shock knives?
We do.
Those are the shit, aren't they?
Yeah, in fact, I was just using one the other day.
Oh, man. Nothing will get my heart going quicker than a shock knife. Yeah. I get my heart rate goes faster with a shock knife than it would a real knife.
Yeah.
I hate those things.
Yeah.
And as an instructor, we were the worst because with other instructors, where I was at, we had like 5, 6, 7, 10. I think we almost had 10 instructors, right? And we knew shock knife was coming up, and the training, then we start working with that, and they're standing there talking on their cell
some
phone.
people are really hyper about the effect of it. They can't get over the psychological component of it. Yeah. Or you've deployed it and it still has that little charge, and you come up and zap them, and it
gets rid of that little bit of juice. Yeah.
What was that?
Oh yeah, that's what I was saying. We would get instructors all the time in the back of their arms when they're sitting on their cell phone, standing off the side of the mat or whatever. You know. I'm like, pay attention.
But it is a way to functionalize it. We put very little emphasis on knife takeaways because, it's like putting your hand in a blender and turning the blender on. Yeah. Run if you can. And then there's a system that we pretty much steal from Filipino martial arts that we have.
Those guys
in our
got
system.
It down.
They got it down.
Oh,
they got it down. But there's going to be times where either because of somebody you don't want to leave, you're not going to leave your wife when somebody's wielding a knife. And you're not going to just run and leave her, or space limitation, where you may have to fight with somebody and secure a knife. But there's a different element when that is no longer a training blade and it becomes a shock knife.
Yep.
It makes it a little bit more real.
It is weird how that works. Yeah.
Kind of ramps it up a little bit. It
does.
Stress inoculates them a little bit.
Man, I still, like I said, I'm used to it. Like I've turned it up to the highest settings. And I've got myself just trying to inoculate myself, basically get used to it. And I can say now confidently, like in the heat of it, I'm fine with it. But when I hear you shocking that thing over, in the next room, preparing it, I'm like, oh, shit.
Yeah. Here it comes again.
It's just like dealing with the paint rounds, the sim rounds. Man, those things.
You guys used it in Academy?
Yeah, for sure. It is. Yeah. We have probably 10 or 15 of those shock knives. We have the sim guns. Yeah. We got. I'm lucky, man. Just my department has everything. So and that's why I try to tell. I call them purists, the ones that only know our academy.
Right.
And I came from another agency.
Okay.
And I'm an Air Force cop as well, so I went through that police academy. So I 3 academies under my belt, and then being an instructor, I've gone to other academies and things of that nature. So I try to tell these guys, I'm like, listen, you have no idea what you have. You think you do, but you don't. You've no idea. I mean, I was training in basically abandoned buildings because that's all we had available. I've went to other places where these guys are training in the driveway of their academy that is, a 3-room building. It's tiny.
Yeah.
And we're out in the driveway.
Yep.
I'm like, that's all we got.
Different environment.
We're out. We went to the park. We had to go to a park. I'm looking at the guys that I work with. I'm like, you wouldn't even show up to this. You wouldn't, I got to be outside. What is this? I should be in our, 4,000 foot padded room that we have. We've got basically a warehouse that is the walls and the floor, have Olympic grade padding. I mean, just it's all removable. We can take it up. Oh, it's beautiful. Yeah. The biggest problem is cleaning. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Because even if we have a full academy class, which is like 60, that place is packed. It's with good distance still.
It's a big class.
It's a big class. So we try to keep it a minimum of 10 students per one instructor, which is still stretching it, in my opinion, safety-wise. But, that's a lot of real estate being taken up. So, but the classes typically aren't 60. They're, 40
It's
to
nice
50.
to have that facility, though.
Oh, sounds like it's so great. Yeah. And it's great, too. Like, there's so many, practitioners, whether it's wrestling, karate, whatever it is. If you worked with me, or you don't even have to. I got the access. You and I, we can go up. We got mats 24/7 access. So
cool.
Yeah. I'm big into that. But all right, brother. Well, you got your Jeet Kune Do. You've got the. Am I saying it right?
Jeet Kune Do.
Kune Do. Yeah.
Yep.
I
hear a lot of variations.
Jeet Kune Do, Jeet Kune Do. I mess up jujitsu all the time. I just like BJJ.
There
BJJ.
you go.
That's what I say. So super easy. And then your program is called Helping. What was it again?
Saving Our Heroes Network.
Saving Our Heroes. Right. I'm going to write that down. So
Saving Our Heroes Network.
Heroes. And the word network is in there too?
Correct.
Okay. I'll make sure I plug that and get.
Assuming somebody doesn't oust it, we've got the name as it stands right now.
Oh, okay, yeah, I did the.
But we don't have a website yet. We're like we said, we're just getting rolling.
Very cool. And then Charles, he's a part of the Blue Voice and all that, and it's all geared toward PTSD and he's got a huge following.
He does. He was telling me of staggering numbers.
Yeah.
I was surprised.
Like he's plugged a couple of the stuff for me.
Yeah.
And just my numbers jumped a lot. Not anything near what he's got. Homeboy's killing it. So, but I want to get him on here and get more exposure to his stuff. Because, like I said, it seems like that you can never fill that cup when it comes to the mental health side.
He would be a great podcast.
You think so?
I really do.
Yeah.
He brings a wealth of information, but also a tremendous amount of experience. And it's easy to talk about something, and he can talk about it from personal experience. Yeah. So.
Well, he vouched for you. So, and I trust him enough. So when he's like, I got a good dude. I was like, all right, man. Yeah, we'll get it going. I think he was right. I think, we're at 1:30 right now.
Man, I appreciate the opportunity.
I thought it was a great podcast.
Thanks. Yeah. I'm real happy you're doing this because like we said, if one person benefits from it, then it makes all of your effort worthwhile.
I agree.
And so thank you for starting it.
Not a problem.
Appreciate it.
And if you ever want to come back on, brother,
Sounds
obviously,
good.
if you got a new message or you want to re-emphasize the old one, I don't care.
Sounds good.
We'll make it work. All right, brother.
Thanks,
Appreciate it, man.
You bet.
Take it easy.
Thanks.